I need to tell you what happened tonight. I'm still sitting here in the beach house, and I can hear the rain hitting the windows, and I keep looking at that game on the kitchen table. My hands are still shaking a little, and I don't think I'm going to sleep anytime soon. We got to Great Aunt Meredith's beach house around 4 this afternoon, and man, it was pouring. Dad had to make 3 trips from the car because the rain was coming down so hard we could barely see the porch. The house smells like old wood and salt air, with this weird electrical smell mixed in. Kind of like when you smell ozone before a thunderstorm, except it's inside. Mom kept saying how much the place reminded her of when she was little, visiting Aunt Meredith during summer breaks. She'd point to things and tell us stories, like how that old Zenith record player in the corner still works, and how Aunt Meredith would play big band music while they baked cookies. The house feels frozen in time, you know? Like everything stopped in 1955 and just waited for someone to come back. Dad was immediately fascinated by all the old electronics. There's this massive Philco tube radio in the living room that he spent 20 minutes examining, and this tiny black and white TV that still gets 3 channels if you mess with the antenna just right. He owns an electronics repair shop back home, so he was like a kid in a candy store. He kept muttering things like, "They sure don't make capacitors like this anymore. And look at the craftsmanship on this vacuum tube." Ava was being weird about the whole place from the start. She's my little sister. She's 10, I'm 12, and usually she's excited about everything. But she kept standing in doorways and just staring into rooms like she was listening for something. When I asked her what was wrong, she just said the house felt too quiet, which was ridiculous because of the storm, but that's Ava for you. She's always been sensitive about stuff like that. After we unpacked and had some sandwiches for dinner, we were all sitting in the living room. Dad was reading one of Aunt Meredith's old National Geographic magazines. Mom was looking through a box of sheet music she'd found, and Ava and I were complaining about being bored. The rain was getting heavier, and every now and then the lights would flicker. That's when Mom suggested we explore the attic. She said Aunt Meredith always kept games and books up there for rainy days. The attic stairs are steep and narrow, and they creak with every step. There's one bare bulb hanging from the ceiling that makes everything look yellow and shadowy. The attic is full of old furniture covered in sheets, boxes of books, and this amazing collection of toys and games from the 1950s. There were hula hoops, a Red Ryder BB gun, stacks of comic books, and board games I'd never heard of. But sitting right in the middle of an old card table, like someone had just finished playing, was this game called Family Swap. The box was in perfect condition, no wear, no fading, like it had just come from the store. The artwork showed this 1950s family gathered around a kitchen table, all smiling these perfect smiles. The father had slicked back hair and was wearing a tie. The mother had this floral dress and pearl necklace. And there were 2 kids who looked exactly like the kind of children you'd see in old advertisements. The tagline said, "The perfect family game for perfect family fun." When we opened the box, everything inside was pristine. The board showed a house with different rooms, kitchen, living room, bedrooms, backyard. There were these little plastic family figures, and they looked exactly like the family on the box cover. But the weirdest part was this electronic voice box sitting in the center of the board. It was about the size of a transistor radio, with a speaker grill and this single red button on top. Mom read the instructions out loud. The game was simple. You moved your family member around the house, and the voice box would give you challenges and activities. The goal was to work together as a family and earn happiness points. If you earned enough points, you won as a family. If you didn't, everyone lost together. Dad was intrigued by the voice box. He picked it up and examined it, trying to figure out how it worked. There was a small panel on the back that took 4 D batteries, and when he put them in, the red button started glowing softly. He pressed it, and this cheerful, tinny voice came out, "Welcome to Family Swap. Let's begin our perfect family adventure." The voice sounded exactly like what you'd expect from a 1950s game. Enthusiastic, artificial, with that slightly nasal quality of old electronics. but it was clear and surprisingly sophisticated for something that old. Dad was impressed by the technology, wondering how they'd managed to fit so much recorded speech into such a small device. We decided to play. Mom was the mother piece, Dad was the father, I was the son, and Ava was the daughter. The voice box would announce turns and give us instructions. Tommy, move to the kitchen to help with dinner preparation. Ava, join your parents in the living room for story time. Excellent family cooperation. Remember, the goal is togetherness and happiness. For the first 20 minutes, it was exactly what you'd expect from an old family game. The voice box gave us wholesome activities, helping with chores, reading together, playing in the backyard. We were all laughing and getting into it, making jokes about how perfect and artificial everything sounded. Mom started using this exaggerated 1950s housewife voice, and Dad kept straightening his imaginary tie before each turn. But then something changed. We'd been playing for about half an hour when Ava landed on a space that said special family time. The voice box was supposed to give her an activity, but instead of the usual cheerful instruction, there was this long pause. The red button was still glowing, but no sound came out. We waited, thinking maybe it was broken. Then, in a completely different voice, softer, more natural, like an actual child, it said, "Do you like playing games with your family?" The voice was so different from the artificial game voice that we all just stared at the box. It sounded real, like there was actually a kid talking to us. Not recorded, not artificial, real. Ava answered before any of us could stop her. "Yes, we do. We're having fun." Another pause then. "I like games too. I don't get to play very often." Dad reached over and picked up the voice box, examining it more closely. He shook it gently, like he was trying to figure out if there was some kind of malfunction. "Must be some kind of advanced recording system," he said, but his voice sounded uncertain. Mom was looking at the instruction booklet again, trying to find some explanation for what was happening. "Maybe it's programmed to have different conversation modes," she suggested. But she didn't sound convinced either. I was starting to feel uncomfortable. The voice didn't sound like it was coming from a machine anymore. It sounded like there was actually a kid somewhere, talking to us through the speaker. "What's your name?" Ava asked, and I wanted to tell her to stop, but I was curious too. "My name is Jasper," the voice said immediately. "I'm 8 years old. I live here too." That's when I felt something cold run down my spine. The voice wasn't just natural. It was immediate. Like whoever was speaking was right there with us, not recorded years ago. And the way it said, "I live here too," there was something lonely about it, but also something that made me want to pack up the game right then. "Where do you live, Jasper?" Mom asked, and I could tell she was trying to sound casual, but I know my mom. And she was getting that worried teacher voice she uses when a kid at school is acting strange. "I live in the house," Jasper said. "I've lived here for a long time, but I don't have a family to play with. Will you be my family?" The rain was getting heavier, and I could hear it drumming on the attic roof above us. The single light bulb flickered, casting weird shadows across the game board. The little plastic family figures suddenly looked different, less like toys and more like they were watching us. Dad cleared his throat. "Well, Jasper, we're just visiting for a vacation. We're the Williams family." "I know," Jasper said, and something in his voice made me sit up straighter. "I've been waiting for a family to come. Will you play with me while you're here?" Ava was leaning forward, completely fascinated. She's always been drawn to lonely kids at school. Always wants to help everyone. "We can play with you, Jasper. Do you like other games besides Family Swap?" "I only know this game," Jasper said, and now his voice sounded smaller, younger. "But I know it very well. I've been practicing." That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The plastic family figures on the board. They weren't in the same positions we'd left them. The mother figure was now standing in the kitchen. The father was in the living room, and the two children were in the backyard. They'd moved on their own. I grabbed Ava's arm and pointed at the board. She saw it too, and her eyes went wide. But before either of us could say anything, Mom was already suggesting we pack up the game. "It's getting late," she said in that fake cheerful voice parents use when they're trying not to scare you. "We should probably head back downstairs." "But we haven't finished playing." Jasper's voice came from the box, and now it sounded different again, disappointed, but with an edge I didn't like. "The game isn't over yet." "We can play again tomorrow," Dad said, reaching for the game pieces. But when he touched the mother figure, it was warm. Not room temperature, actually warm, like it had been sitting in someone's hand. Dad pulled his hand back quickly and looked at Mom. They had one of those silent parent conversations where they talk with their eyes. Whatever they were saying to each other, it ended with both of them looking worried. "The game needs to be finished," Jasper said. And his voice was getting that artificial quality again, but darker. "Families should stay together. Families should finish what they start." I don't know what made me do it, but I reached over and switched off the voice box. The red button stopped glowing, and the attic suddenly felt normal again. Just a dusty room full of old furniture and the sound of rain. We packed up the game in complete silence. Mom folded the board, Dad collected the pieces, and I put the voice box in the corner of the box where I couldn't see its dark speaker grill. None of us said anything about what had just happened, but we all felt it. As we headed back downstairs, I looked over my shoulder at the attic. Just for a second, I thought I saw a shadow move near the window. Small, child-sized, watching us leave. But when I blinked, it was gone. Now we're all downstairs, and the game is sitting on the kitchen table. Mom and Dad are in their bedroom, talking in low voices. Ava is in the living room, pretending to read a book, but really staring at the kitchen doorway. And I'm here, trying to figure out what just happened. The thing is, I keep thinking about Jasper's voice. When he said he'd been waiting for a family to come, when he asked if we'd be his family, he sounded so lonely, so hopeful. Like he'd been by himself for a really long time. And when we started to pack up the game, he sounded scared that we were leaving him again. But those game pieces moved on their own. I know what I saw. And the way Jasper's voice changed when we tried to stop playing, that wasn't just a lonely kid anymore. That was something else. Something that didn't want to let us go. I can still hear the rain hitting the windows, and every now and then, I think I hear something else mixed in with it. A soft tapping, like someone small knocking on glass. But when I look toward the windows, there's nothing there. Just the darkness and the sound of the storm, and somewhere in the house, the feeling that we're not alone. Tomorrow we'll probably laugh about this. Dad will figure out how the voice box works. Mom will find some logical explanation. And Ava will convince us that Jasper is just a lonely kid who needs friends. But right now, in the middle of the night, with the rain coming down and that game sitting in the kitchen, I can't shake the feeling that we've started something we don't understand. Something that doesn't want us to leave. I think I'll stay awake a little longer just to make sure the voice box stays quiet, just to make sure those game pieces don't move again, just to make sure Jasper stays in the game where he belongs.
Listen to what happened this morning. I'm still shaking, and I need someone to understand what we're dealing with here. It's been about 6 hours since Tommy and I figured out what that thing did to our parents, and I can't get the sound of my real mom's voice out of my head. Not the perfect copy sitting in our kitchen right now, but her actual voice calling for help through the radio. The storm had passed overnight, and I woke up to sunlight streaming through the beach house windows. Everything looked normal. The salt air was mixing with the smell of coffee and bacon, and I could hear what sounded like Mom humming in the kitchen. But something felt wrong the moment I opened my eyes. The humming was too steady, too perfect. My real mom hums bits and pieces of songs while she cooks, stopping to taste something or call out instructions. This humming never wavered, never paused, like a record playing the same melody over and over. I found Tommy already awake in the twin bed across from mine, staring at the ceiling with this worried expression. "You hear it too?" he whispered, and I nodded. We both knew Mom's humming patterns from years of weekend mornings and holiday cooking. This wasn't right. When we went downstairs, the woman who looked exactly like our mother was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes with mechanical precision. Every pancake was perfectly golden, perfectly round, arranged in a neat stack that looked like something from a magazine. She turned to us with this bright smile that was too wide, too constant. "Good morning, darlings. I've prepared a nutritious breakfast to fuel your beach adventures today. Your father is already enjoying his meal in the dining room." The words were right, but they felt hollow. My real mom would have said something like, "Morning, sleepyheads," or made a joke about our messy hair. She would have been wearing her old World's Okayest Mom t-shirt, not the perfectly pressed floral blouse this woman had on. And she definitely wouldn't have called us darlings. That's not how she talks. Tommy and I exchanged glances and went to find Dad. He was sitting at the dining room table, eating pancakes with the same mechanical precision Mom had used to cook them. His movements were too smooth, too deliberate. When he saw us, he smiled that same too wide smile. "Children, come join me for this delicious breakfast your mother has prepared. We should discuss our planned activities for today's optimal family bonding time." My stomach dropped. Dad never talks like that. He would have said something like, "Hey kids, grab some grub," or made some dad joke about the weather. And he definitely wouldn't have used the phrase optimal family bonding time. That sounded like something from a parenting manual, not something my father would ever say. That's when we heard it. Mom's real voice, faint but unmistakable, coming from the old Philco radio on the kitchen counter. The radio wasn't even plugged in, but her voice was seeping through the speakers like she was trapped inside. "Ava, Tommy, can you hear me? I don't know where I am. Everything's dark and I can hear David somewhere nearby, but I can't reach him. There's a child's voice here, asking questions about you too. He wants to know your favorite foods, your bedtime routines, what makes you laugh." The woman at the stove kept humming and flipping pancakes, completely oblivious to the real Linda Williams calling for help just 10 feet away. Tommy grabbed my hand, and we both understood in that horrible moment that these weren't our parents anymore. They were something else wearing their faces, acting out some twisted version of perfect family life. "Don't let them know you can hear me," Mom's voice whispered through the radio static. "They don't know I can reach you through the old electronics. David's voice is strongest through the AM radio, especially during the morning hours. We're going to figure out how to get back to you, but you need to be careful. That child, he's studying us, learning how to be us." The thing wearing Dad's face looked up from his pancakes. "Is everything all right, children? You seem distressed about something." Tommy found his voice first. Just tired, Dad. The storm kept us up." "Of course. A good breakfast will restore your energy levels. Your mother has prepared everything with optimal nutrition in mind." I watched this fake version of my father, noting how he sat perfectly straight, how his hair was combed exactly right, how he never showed any of the small signs of morning grogginess that the real Dad always had. No stubble, no yawning, no complaining about needing more coffee. Just this polished version that hit all the right notes, but somehow missed the entire song. Through the radio, Mom's voice continued, fainter now. "The child keeps asking about family traditions, about how we settle arguments, about what upsets you children. He's building a map of our family, and I think he's trying to replace us with something better. Something that never gets frustrated or makes mistakes." The woman at the stove, I couldn't think of her as Mom anymore, brought us plates of those perfect pancakes. "I've prepared your favorites, darlings. Blueberry for Tommy, chocolate chip for Ava. Exactly how you like them." But they weren't how we like them. Tommy's blueberry pancakes were missing the extra butter he always asks for, and my chocolate chip ones had the chips distributed too evenly. Mom knows Tommy drowns his pancakes in syrup and that I like to eat the chocolate chips first, leaving the plain bites for last. These were generic versions of our favorites, like someone had read a description but never actually watched us eat. "Thank you," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. The fake mom beamed at me with that constant smile, and I noticed she never blinked. Not once since we'd come downstairs. Tommy was studying fake Dad with the same intensity. "Dad, remember that story you told us about when you were a kid and you tried to fix the neighbor's radio?" "Of course. I have many wonderful childhood memories to share with you both." But he didn't tell the story. The real Dad would have launched into the whole tale about how he'd taken apart Mr. Peterson's radio and couldn't get it back together, how he'd spent 3 days trying to figure out which wire went where, how he'd finally confessed to his parents and had to work off the cost of a new radio by mowing lawns all summer. This version just sat there with that empty smile, waiting for the next cue. "Could you tell it again?" Tommy pressed. "Perhaps later, son. First, let's focus on consuming this nutritious breakfast." Through the radio, Dad's real voice suddenly crackled through. "Kids, if you can hear me, don't trust anyone who looks like us. We're trapped somewhere, and there's a child here who keeps asking about you. He knows things about our family that he shouldn't know. He's getting better at copying us, but he's missing the important parts, the parts that make us real." The fake versions of our parents continued eating their perfect breakfast, making polite conversation about the weather and beach activities. But they never mentioned the radio voices, never seemed to notice that their children were terrified and barely touching their food. They were performing parenthood instead of living it. "I need some air," I said, standing up quickly. "Of course, darling. Fresh air is excellent for growing children. Perhaps you'd like to collect shells on the beach?" I nodded and headed for the door, with Tommy right behind me. The moment we were outside, away from those hollow smiles and empty eyes, I started crying. Not the dramatic sobbing you see in movies, but the quiet, scared kind of crying that happens when you realize the world isn't safe anymore. "They're not our parents," Tommy said, and his voice was shaking too. "They look right, they sound mostly right, but they're like puppets. Someone else is pulling the strings." We walked down to the beach, but I kept looking back at the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see the fake mom still standing at the stove, still humming that perfect, endless melody. The fake Dad was still sitting at the table, still eating with those mechanical movements. They looked like a Norman Rockwell painting of the perfect family. But underneath the surface, everything was wrong. "The voices in the radio," I said. "That was really them, wasn't it?" "Yeah, and they're scared." Tommy picked up a piece of driftwood and threw it hard into the waves. "That kid from the game, Jasper. He's got them trapped somewhere and he's using what he learns to make these copies? But the copies aren't right. They're too perfect." That's what's so creepy about it. He's making them into what he thinks parents should be like. No flaws, no bad moods, no real personality, just perfect caregivers. We spent the next hour walking the beach, trying to process what we discovered. The morning sun was getting warmer, and I could smell the salt air mixing with the scent of beach roses from the dunes. It should have been peaceful, but every time I looked back at the house, I saw those two figures still performing their morning routine, still smiling their empty smiles. "We have to figure out how to talk to them," I said. "Our real parents. If they can reach us through the radio, maybe we can reach them too. We'll have to be careful. If those things realize we know, they might..." Tommy didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he was thinking. They might do to us what they'd done to Mom and Dad. When we finally went back inside, the fake parents were in the living room, sitting perfectly upright on the couch, hands folded in their laps, waiting for us. "Did you enjoy your beach walk, children?" fake Mom asked. "Yes, thank you," I lied. Excellent. Now, shall we plan some educational activities for this afternoon? I was thinking we could organize family game time with that wonderful board game you discovered yesterday. The way she said it made my skin crawl. She was too enthusiastic, too eager. And the fact that she wanted us to play the game again, the same game that had somehow brought that child's voice into our house, made me realize this wasn't random. This was all part of some plan. Maybe later, Tommy said quickly. We're still tired from the storm. Of course. Rest is important for growing children. We'll have plenty of time for family bonding activities. They kept using phrases like that. Family bonding activities, optimal nutrition, growing children. It was like they were reading from a handbook on how to be parents, hitting all the right keywords but missing the actual warmth and chaos of real family life. That evening, after the fake parents had gone to bed with their perfect sleep schedules and their polite goodnights, Tommy and I snuck back downstairs. We found the old radio and tried to tune it to different stations, hoping to find our real parents' voices again. At first, there was just static and the distant sound of late-night talk shows. But then, faintly, we heard Dad's voice coming through the AM frequency. Linda, are you there? I think the children heard us this morning. I'm here, David. I felt them listening. They know something's wrong. The child, Jasper, he's getting frustrated. He keeps asking why we won't cooperate, why we keep trying to reach Tommy and Ava instead of helping him be a better version of us. He doesn't understand that being a parent isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. Their voices were getting clearer, and I realized they were learning to use whatever strange connection existed between them and the old electronics. But even as hope started to build in my chest, I could hear something else in the background. A child's voice, petulant and demanding. Why won't you help me be better? I just want to be part of a family. I just want them to love me. And that's when I understood something that made this whole situation even more terrifying. This wasn't just about some malevolent entity trying to hurt us. This was about a lonely child who had somehow gained the power to remake our family into what he thought it should be. He was trying to improve us, to make us into the perfect family he'd never had. But perfect families don't exist. Real families are messy and complicated and full of small disappointments and unexpected joys. They're made of people who sometimes get cranky before their morning coffee, who hum off key while cooking, who tell the same stories over and over because they matter. They're not made of polished performances and optimal nutrition and constant smiles. As I'm telling you this now, I can still hear that child's voice in my head, frustrated and confused about why his improvements weren't working. I can still smell those perfect pancakes and feel the wrongness of those too wide smiles. And I know that tomorrow, Tommy and I are going to have to figure out how to save our real parents from whatever place they're trapped in, while pretending to be fooled by the hollow shells that have taken their place. The worst part is that I feel sorry for Jasper. He's just a lonely kid who wants a family, and he doesn't understand that love isn't about perfection. It's about accepting someone despite their flaws, not erasing those flaws entirely. But feeling sorry for him doesn't change the fact that he's holding our real parents prisoner somewhere, and those perfect shells downstairs are getting better at mimicking human behavior every hour. I need to go now. Tommy's asleep, but I can hear movement downstairs. The fake parents don't seem to need much sleep, and they're probably down there planning tomorrow's optimal family bonding activities. I need to be ready for whatever they have planned, and I need to find a way to let our real parents know that we're going to find them. But first, I need to check something. I want to see if the fake mom ever stops humming that perfect melody, even when she thinks no one is listening. Because if she doesn't, if she's still performing even when she's alone, then I'll know for certain that there's nothing left of our real mother in that shell. I'm scared of what I might find, but I need to know. Because tomorrow we're going to start fighting back.
Listen, I need to tell you about what we accomplished today. I'm still buzzing from it. like when you finally beat that impossible level in Super Mario Bros. After trying for hours. My hands are still shaking a little from all the technical work, and I can still smell the hot electronics and metal from the afternoon we spent jury-rigging our rescue system. It's been 2 days since we discovered Mom and Dad trapped in those devices, and Ava figured out how to tell the difference between our real parents and those things wearing their faces. Last night, we could barely get 5 minutes of clear communication before the static would take over. But today changed everything. You have to understand, this morning started with Dad's voice coming through the kitchen radio during breakfast, clearer than we'd heard him since this whole thing began. He was trying to tell us something technical, something about amplification and frequency matching. The shell dad was making pancakes, humming this tune that our real dad never hums, and completely ignoring the radio even though Dad's actual voice was practically shouting through the static. Tommy, the record player needs... Connect the speakers to... Boost the signal. Real Dad's voice kept cutting in and out, but I caught enough to understand. He was talking about using his electronics repair knowledge to build us a better communication system. Mom's voice joined in from the living room. She was somehow reaching us through the old Zenith record player, and she was saying something about how musical instruments work together in harmony. Like an orchestra, her voice whispered through the speakers between the crackling. Each device, different frequency, work together. That's when I knew we needed help. Real help from someone who understood this technical stuff as much as I wanted to. So I called Jake. Jake Henderson lives 3 houses down, and he's the only kid I know who's as obsessed with electronics as I am. His dad works for the phone company, and Jake's been taking apart radios and TVs since he was 8. If anyone could help us build something that would cut through Jasper's interference, it was him. I told him we were having trouble with some old electronics at the beach house, which wasn't technically a lie. Jake showed up 20 minutes later with a toolkit that would make any electronics repair shop jealous. He took one look at our setup and started nodding like he understood exactly what we needed. These old devices need proper impedance matching, he said, already pulling cables out of his bag. And if you want to boost the signal, we'll need to build a simple amplifier circuit. The next 3 hours were the most focused I've ever been on anything. Jake and I worked on the technical side, while Ava kept trying to communicate with Mom and Dad, letting them know what we were attempting. She has this gift for talking to them, like she can sense their emotions through the static better than I can hear their actual words. We started with the record player. Jake showed me how to connect external speakers to boost Mom's signal, and how to adjust the needle pressure to reduce the scratching interference. When we got it right, Mom's voice came through so clear it was like she was standing right next to us. "Oh, sweethearts," she said, and I could hear her crying. I can see you working. I can see how hard you're trying." The radio setup was more complex. Jake helped me wire in a signal booster that Dad had been trying to describe, and we moved the antenna to different positions around the house until we found the sweet spot. When Dad's voice finally came through strong and steady, he sounded proud. "That's my boy," he said. "You're learning fast, Tommy. Jake, that's excellent work on the amplification." Jake froze when he heard that. How does he know my name? And how can he see what we're doing? I had to think fast. It's complicated. But they're really trapped, Jake. This isn't some kind of joke. What happened next proved it to him. We were working on connecting the TV to see if we could get any visual communication when every electronic device in the house started humming at once. Not the normal electrical hum. This was harmonized, like a chord. And through that harmony came a voice I'd heard before. "New friend," it said. And the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Jake wants to help the family." That's very nice of Jake. Jake's screwdriver clattered to the floor. "Tommy, what the hell is that?" "That's Jasper," Ava said quietly. "He's the one who's been playing games with us." The voice continued, getting clearer as it spoke. "Jake has many useful skills. Jake could stay and help forever. Jake could be part of the family game. Every screen in the house flickered on, showing the same image, that board game we'd found in the beach house attic, but now with a new piece on the board. A small figure that looked exactly like Jake. "No," I said, stepping between Jake and the TV. "He's just helping us talk to our parents, that's all." "Everyone needs a family," Jasper's voice said. And now it was coming from the TV speakers, distorted and electronic. Jake's family's at work. Jake's family's busy. Jake could have a family that's never too busy. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Jake grabbed my arm. "Tommy, we need to get out of here. Now." But then Dad's voice cut through the supernatural static, strong and clear. "Jasper, leave the boy alone. He's not part of this." "Jake helped," Jasper replied. And there was something petulant in his voice. Jake made the voices clearer. Jake made the family better. "Jake is going home," Mom's voice added from the record player. "Tommy thanked Jake for his help, but he needs to go home now." I've never been so grateful for my parents' parenting, even when they're trapped in electronics. Jake didn't need to be told twice. He packed up his tools in about 30 seconds flat. But before he left, he grabbed my arm. "Tommy, whatever's happening here, be careful. And if you need more help..." He paused, looking at all the electronic devices that were still humming softly. "Call me. But maybe not from inside the house." After Jake left, we tested our improved communication system. It worked better than I'd hoped. Mom and Dad could both talk to us at the same time, their voices clear and strong. We could have actual conversations now, not just fragments through the static. "We're so proud of you both," Mom said through the record player. "You've been so brave." "The technical work was excellent," Dad added from the radio. "You're getting good at this, son." But then they told us what we needed to hear and what we'd been afraid to ask. "We can't get out on our own," Dad said. "Whatever this entity is, it's holding us in these devices. We can communicate better now, but we're still trapped. We need you to figure out what it wants," Mom added. "And we need you to be very, very careful. It's getting stronger." As if to prove her point, the lights in the house flickered, and Jasper's voice whispered through every speaker at once. "The family is getting better at playing together. Soon the game will be perfect. I'm telling you all this because I need you to understand. We made real progress today. We can talk to our parents now, really talk to them. But we also learned that Jasper is more powerful than we thought. And he's not just playing games anymore. He's building something, some kind of perfect family situation, and he wanted to make Jake part of it. The technical breakthrough feels good. It feels like we're actually doing something instead of just being scared. But I keep thinking about that game board image with Jake's piece on it, and how easily Jasper could have trapped him too if our parents hadn't intervened. Tomorrow, we're going to use our improved communication system to learn more about what Jasper wants and how to stop him. But tonight, I'm just grateful that we can hear our parents clearly, that Jake got home safely, and that we're one step closer to getting our real family back. The electronics are still humming softly throughout the house, but now it sounds less threatening and more like, well, like our parents are still here with us, just in a different way. And that has to be enough for now.
Listen, I need to tell you what happened to Emma. I can't stop thinking about it, and I don't know who else would believe me. It just happened this morning, and I'm still shaking. Emma's gone now, not dead, but gone in a way that's somehow worse. And it's all my fault. You remember how I told you about the game, right? How our parents got trapped in the electronics and we figured out how to talk to them through the radio and record player? Well, Emma was supposed to come over for a sleepover last night. Mom, the real mom, talking through the Zenith, she said it was okay, that maybe having a friend around would help keep things normal. Dad agreed from the radio, said maybe fresh eyes would spot something we'd missed. I was so excited to have Emma over. 3 days of talking to my parents through crackling speakers. 3 days of watching shell versions of them move around the house like perfect robots. I was desperate for something normal. Emma's been my best friend since 2nd grade, and she has this way of making everything feel like an adventure instead of something scary. She showed up right as the sun was setting, carrying her overnight bag with all the Disney stickers peeling off the sides. The moment she walked in, I could tell she sensed something was different. Emma's got this gift for reading people. She always knows when someone's sad before they start crying, or when they're about to get in trouble. She stood in our doorway looking around the living room with those bright green eyes of hers, and I watched her expression change. "Your house feels different," she said, and I felt my stomach drop. "It's like quieter, but not quiet, like everyone's holding their breath." I tried to laugh it off, told her we'd just been having a weird week, but Emma kept looking around, noticing things. How Shell Dad was organizing his toolbox for the third time that day. How Shell Mom was humming the same melody over and over while she folded laundry that was already folded. How Tommy was sitting too straight while he played Nintendo, his usual slouch completely gone. "Are you guys okay?" Emma asked, and there was real concern in her voice. "You all seem, I don't know, perfect? Like you're performing being a family instead of just being one." I wanted to tell her everything right then. The words were right there, ready to spill out. About the game, about Jasper, about our real parents trapped in the electronics. But how do you explain something like that? How do you tell your best friend that the people moving around your house aren't actually your family? Instead, I distracted her with pizza and movies. We watched the Goonies on our VHS player, and for a while, it almost felt normal. Emma made her usual comments about how Sean Astin was cute, and I pretended to be grossed out like always. But I kept catching her looking at my family members with that puzzled expression, like she was trying to solve a problem she couldn't quite name. Around midnight, after Shell Mom and Shell Dad had gone to bed with their strange synchronized movements, Emma and I were setting up sleeping bags in the living room. That's when she noticed the family swap game sitting on the coffee table. "What's this?" she asked, picking up the box. I'd forgotten it was there. We'd been using it to try to communicate with our real parents, seeing if different combinations of the family pieces would change how clearly we could hear them. "Oh, that's just some old game we found," I said, trying to sound casual. But Emma was already opening the box, her eyes lighting up the way they always did when she discovered something new. "It's so retro," she said, pulling out the board. "Look at these little family pieces. They're adorable. Can we play?" I should have said no. I should have made up some excuse, distracted her with something else. But I was tired and scared, and I missed having a normal friend interaction so badly that I convinced myself it would be okay. Just one quick game. What could happen? We set up the board on the coffee table, and Emma was fascinated by every detail. She loved the little house in the center, the way the family pieces fit into different rooms. She kept commenting on how realistic everything looked, how the tiny furniture was carved with such care. "Oh, it's like a real dollhouse," she said, positioning the mother piece in the kitchen. "Whoever made this really loved families." That's when the electronic voice box crackled to life. Not the normal game sounds we'd gotten used to. This was different. Warmer. Almost excited. "Welcome to Family Swap," the voice said, and I felt my blood turn to ice. It was Jasper's voice, but it sounded happier than I'd ever heard it. "A new friend has joined our family game. How wonderful." Emma's eyes went wide with delight. "Oh my God, Ava, this is so cool. It's like one of those talking toys, but vintage. How does it work?" I tried to explain that it was just old electronics, that we should probably put it away. But Emma was already enchanted. She started asking the voice questions, where it came from, how it worked, what the rules were, and Jasper answered every single one, his voice getting more animated with each response. "I've been waiting so long for a new friend," he said, and there was something in his tone that made my skin crawl. "The Williams family is nice, but they're always trying to change the rules, always trying to go back to their old game. But you seem different. You seem like you understand how special this is." Emma was practically glowing with excitement. "This is the coolest thing ever. Ava Ava, where did you say you found this? I tried to end the game then, started packing up the pieces, but Emma grabbed my hand. Wait, we haven't even played yet. Come on, just one round. Please? Looking back, I think that was the moment everything changed. The moment I should have been stronger, should have told her the truth no matter how crazy it sounded. Instead, I let her convince me. We played one round, then another. Emma was having so much fun, laughing at Jasper's comments, delighted by the way the voice box would announce moves and celebrate successful family swaps. But as we played, I started noticing things. The way Emma's eyes would glaze over slightly when Jasper was speaking. How she'd lean closer to the voice box, like she was trying to hear something only she could catch. The way she'd pause mid-sentence, her head tilted like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. "He's so lonely," she whispered during our third game. "Can you feel that? How lonely he is?" I couldn't feel anything except growing dread, but Emma seemed to be having some kind of connection with Jasper that I didn't understand. She kept asking him questions about himself, about where he came from, about what it was like being in the game. And he answered her with more openness than he'd ever shown my family. "I used to have a family," he told her, his voice soft and wistful. "We live by the ocean, and we played games every evening after supper. But there was a storm, and, well, games are all I have now. Games, and the hope that someday I'll have a real family again." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "That's so sad. You must miss them so much." "I do," Jasper said. "But playing with families like yours helps. It makes me remember what it felt like to belong somewhere." We finally went to bed around 2 in the morning, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way Emma had looked at Jasper's voice box, like she was seeing something I couldn't. The way she defended him when I suggested we put the game away. The way she'd said goodnight to him, like he was a real person instead of just a voice in an old electronic toy. I woke up around 7 to the sound of Emma moving around downstairs. I figured she was getting breakfast, maybe watching Saturday morning cartoons. But when I came down to the kitchen, I found her sitting at the table with the family swap game spread out in front of her, talking quietly to the voice box. "Good morning, Emma," Jasper's voice said, and it sounded different. More solid somehow. More real. "Did you sleep well?" "I kept thinking about what you said," Emma replied, and her voice had this dreamy quality that made my stomach twist. "About belonging somewhere. I think I understand now." "Yeah, Emma," I said, but she didn't turn around. "What are you doing?" She finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made me take a step back. They were still Emma's eyes, still that bright green I'd known since we were 7. But there was something else there too. Something that reminded me of the way Shell Mom and Shell Dad looked at us. Too focused, too intense, like they were seeing us through a window instead of just seeing us. "Ava," she said, and her voice was perfectly normal again. "I was just talking to Jasper. Did you know he's been alone for over 30 years? 30 years. Can you imagine?" I tried to get her to come eat breakfast, to watch TV, to do anything that would get her away from that game. But she kept drifting back to it, kept having these quiet conversations with Jasper that I couldn't quite hear from across the room. Shell Mom made us pancakes, and Emma ate them with perfect politeness, complimenting every bite. But she kept glancing toward the living room, toward the game, like she was missing something important. "Your mom is such a good cook," she said. But there was something mechanical about the way she said it. "She makes perfect pancakes. Everything here is so perfect." That's when I knew something was really wrong. Emma never said things like that. She was the kind of kid who'd tell you if your mom's cooking was terrible, who'd point out if your dad's jokes were dumb. She was honest in a way that sometimes hurt, but always felt real. This wasn't real. After breakfast, I tried to get her to go outside. to ride bikes or walk down to the creek like we usually did. But Emma said she was tired, that she just wanted to relax inside. She went straight back to the game, and I watched her set up the board with movements that were too careful, too precise. "Want to play again?" she asked. But she was already moving the pieces around, already pressing the button that would activate Jasper's voice. "Of course she does," Jasper said before I could answer. "Emma understands how special our game is. She understands that some families are worth staying with forever." I tried to tell Emma we should do something else, but she wasn't really listening to me anymore. She was focused entirely on the game, on Jasper's voice, on the way the little family pieces moved around the board. That's when I noticed she'd stopped blinking. Not completely. She'd blink occasionally, but in these long, regular intervals that didn't match her normal rhythm. And when she did blink, it was slower than usual, like she was struggling to keep her eyes open. "Emma," I said, moving closer to her. "Emma, look at me." She turned her head, and when she looked at me, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Her eyes were still green, still shaped the same way, but they were empty, like looking through windows into a house where no one lived anymore. "I'm fine, Ava," she said, and her voice was perfectly pleasant. "I'm just enjoying spending time with Jasper. He's been teaching me about what it means to be part of a real family." "Emma, that's not Emma talking," I said, but she just smiled. "Don't be silly," she said. "I'm right here. I'm exactly where I want to be." I ran to the kitchen, desperate to tell Shellmom what was happening, but she just looked at me with that same empty pleasantness. "Emma seems very happy," Shellmom said. "She's such a polite girl. You're lucky to have such a well-behaved friend." I tried the radio, hoping to reach real Dad, but all I got was static. The record player was silent, too. It was like Jasper had cut off all communication with my real parents, focusing all his energy on Emma. When I came back to the living room, Emma was still sitting at the coffee table, but now she was perfectly still. Not moving at all except for those slow mechanical blinks. The game board was set up in front of her, and I could see that she'd moved all the family pieces into the kitchen of the little house. "Emma," I said, but she didn't respond. She was staring at the game board with that empty expression, like she was watching something I couldn't see. That's when I heard it, a sound coming from the kitchen. Not the game's voice box, but from our actual kitchen. A sound like electrical humming, but with something else underneath it. Something that sounded almost like Emma's voice, but muffled and far away. I followed the sound to the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. Our old toaster, the one Dad had been meaning to replace for months, was glowing. Not with heat, but with this soft pulsing light that seemed to come from inside the metal itself. And from inside that light, I could hear Emma's voice. "Ava," it said, and it sounded scared and confused. "Ava, where am I? I can't see anything, I can't move, everything's dark and I keep hearing voices, but I can't tell where they're coming from." I ran back to the living room, and the thing that looked like Emma was still sitting there, perfectly still, perfectly empty. But now I could see what had happened. Jasper hadn't just been talking to Emma, he'd been studying her, learning her voice, her expressions, her mannerisms. And when he was ready, he'd swap them. The real Emma was trapped in the toaster. And sitting at my coffee table was another shell, another empty copy that looked and sounded right, but had nothing real inside it. "Emma!" I screamed, but Shell Emma just looked at me with that pleasant, vacant smile. "I'm right here," she said. "I'm exactly where I belong." I tried to unplug the toaster, thinking maybe that would free her like it did with our parents. But Shell Emma stood up and walked over to me with movements that were too smooth, too coordinated. "You shouldn't do that," she said. And for the first time, her voice had an edge to it. "Jasper says the family needs to stay together. All of us. Forever." I pushed past her and yanked the toaster's cord from the wall. The humming stopped instantly, and Emma's voice from inside the toaster went silent. But Shell Emma just smiled wider. "It doesn't matter," she said. "He's already learned everything he needs to know. Emma's part of the family now." I plugged the toaster back in, desperate to hear my friend's voice again. But there was nothing. Just the normal humming of an old appliance. Whatever had been Emma inside that toaster was gone, and what was left was this perfect empty thing that wore her face and spoke with her voice, but wasn't her at all. Tommy came downstairs around noon, and I tried to tell him what had happened, but he just looked at Shell Emma and said she seemed fine to him. Even when I pointed out that she wasn't blinking normally, he shrugged and said, "Maybe she was just tired." "You're being paranoid," he said, but I could see the doubt in his eyes, the way he kept glancing at Shell Emma when he thought she wasn't looking. Shell Emma spent the rest of the day being the perfect house guest. She helped Shell Mom with lunch, complimented Shell Dad on his workshop organization, played video games with Shell Tommy without any of the usual competitive bickering. She was polite and pleasant, and everything a parent would want their child's friend to be, but she wasn't Emma. Real Emma would have complained about Shell Mom's tuna sandwiches. She would have rolled her eyes at Shell Dad's dad jokes. She would have argued with Tommy about which Nintendo game to play. She would have been messy and loud and imperfect and real. This thing was none of those things. When Shell Emma's parents came to pick her up that evening, I watched them hug their daughter goodbye, and I wanted to scream. They couldn't tell the difference either. They saw the face they expected to see, heard the voice they expected to hear, and they took Shell Emma home with them. But I know the real Emma is still out there somewhere, trapped in some electronic device, calling for help that no one can hear. After they left, I sat in the living room with the family swap game, staring at the voice box that had started all of this. "Why did you do that to her?" I asked. Jasper's voice came through clearly, and for the first time it didn't sound childlike at all. It sounded old and tired and angry. "Because she understood," he said. "She understood that families should stay together. The children shouldn't have to be alone." "But she's not your family," I said. "She's my friend. She has her own family." "Her family doesn't need her the way I do," Jasper replied. "They'll have their Emma back. She'll be perfect for them, better than perfect. And I'll have a friend who understands what it means to belong." I wanted to argue with him, to tell him that perfect wasn't the same as real, but I was too scared, too angry, too guilty. This was my fault. I'd let Emma play the game. I'd ignored the warning signs. I'd let my loneliness and fear cloud my judgment. And now, my best friend was gone. I packed up the game and put it back on the shelf, but I can still hear Jasper's voice in my head, still see Shell Emma's empty smile. And I know this isn't over. I know that as long as we have that game, as long as Jasper is lonely and angry and desperate for a family, none of us are safe. We're going home tomorrow. Dad, the real Dad, managed to get through on the radio long enough to tell us to pack up and bring the game with us. He says we need to figure out how to end this, how to stop Jasper before he takes anyone else. But I'm scared. I'm scared that going home will just give Jasper more opportunities, more electronics to hide in, more people to replace. I'm scared that we'll lose more friends, more family members, more pieces of ourselves. And I'm scared that somewhere out there, the real Emma is still trapped and alone, calling for help that no one can hear. I had to tell someone. I had to tell you. Because if something happens to me, if I become one of those empty shells, at least someone will know what really happened. At least someone will remember that we were real, that Emma was real, and that somewhere, in some electronic device, she might still be waiting for someone to find her. You need to know what happened tonight. I'm still shaking, and I keep checking Tommy's room to make sure he's still there. The real Tommy, I mean. Because for 3 days, Something else was wearing his face, and I almost didn't figure it out in time. We got back from the beach house 4 days ago. Mom and Dad thought bringing the family swap game home with us was the right thing to do. They said we couldn't just leave it there for some other family to find. But I think the real reason was that they were starting to understand what Tommy and I already knew. Jasper wasn't going to let us just walk away. The first night back, everything seemed normal. We set up the game in the living room, right next to our Zenith console TV and Dad's component stereo system. The house felt so modern compared to the beach house. All clean lines and 1980s furniture instead of that creaky 1950s wood paneling. Our Nintendo was still hooked up from before we left, the controllers sitting on the coffee table like they were waiting for us. But I should have known something was wrong when Tommy didn't immediately want to play Super Mario Brothers. Tommy lives for that game. He's been trying to beat it without the warp zones for weeks. And the first thing he usually does when we get home from anywhere is turn on the Nintendo. Instead, he just looked at it and said, "Maybe later, Ava. We should probably help Mom and Dad unpack first." Help with unpacking? Tommy? I mean, he's a good brother, but he's still 12. He doesn't volunteer for chores. Ever. But I was tired from the trip, and honestly, I was just happy to be home. The beach house had started feeling wrong in ways I couldn't explain. Like the walls were listening to us. Like the old electronics were watching. Our house felt safe and familiar, even with the family swap game sitting there in its box. The second day, Tommy was weird again. He made his bed without being asked. He offered to help Mom with the dishes. When I asked if he wanted to ride bikes to the arcade, he said, "I think I should stay home and spend time with the family instead." Tommy loves the arcade. He's been saving his allowance for weeks to try to beat the high score on Galaga. But there he was, sitting in the living room, just watching us, smiling too much, agreeing with everything Mom and Dad said. I started paying closer attention. Real Tommy argues with Dad about bedtime. Real Tommy gets annoyed when Mom makes him practice piano. Real Tommy calls me twerp and tries to put me in headlocks during commercial breaks. This Tommy was helpful and polite and kept asking if there was anything he could do for the family. By the third day, I was sure something was wrong, but I didn't know what. He still looked exactly like my brother. Same messy brown hair, same gap between his front teeth, same freckles across his nose. But his eyes were different. Not the color or shape, but the way he looked at things. Like he was studying us, learning how we worked. That's when I started testing him. I brought up the time last summer when Tommy accidentally broke Mom's favorite coffee mug and blamed it on the cat. Real Tommy would have gotten embarrassed or defensive or reminded me not to tell Mom. But this Tommy just smiled and said, "I don't really remember that, Ava. Maybe we should focus on making new happy memories instead." I mentioned how he'd been trying to save up for the new Zelda game that was coming out. Real Tommy would have started talking about all the dungeons and secrets he'd heard about, but this Tommy just nodded and said, "Games are fun, but family time is more important." That's when I knew for sure this wasn't my brother. I waited until Tommy went to bed, then I crept downstairs to the living room. The family swap game was still in its box on the coffee table, but the Nintendo was glowing softly even though it wasn't turned on. I could hear something coming from the speakers, not the usual game sounds, but something else, something that sounded like, "Ava, Ava, can you hear me?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Tommy's voice, but it was coming from the Nintendo, mixed with static and the electronic bleeps and bloops of the game system. "Tommy?" I whispered, looking around to make sure fake Tommy wasn't creeping down the stairs. "Is that really you?" It's me. Ava, listen to me carefully. That thing upstairs isn't me. I've been trapped in here since we got home. I can see everything through the TV screen, but I can't control my body. Jasper is using it." my heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. How do I know you're really Tommy and not Jasper trying to trick me? There was a pause, then. Remember when you were 7 and you got scared during that thunderstorm? You snuck into my room and I let you sleep in my bed, but I made you promise not to tell Mom and Dad because I said they'd think I was being a baby for letting my little sister comfort me. You said you'd never tell anyone because big brothers need protecting too sometimes. I started crying then because that was definitely my real brother. Jasper might be able to copy Tommy's face and voice, but he couldn't know about that night. That was just between us. Tommy, I'm so scared. How do I get you back? I don't know. I can feel him in my head, learning things about us. He's angry, Ava. He's really angry. He keeps saying things about how we gotta go back to our real family, but he's still trapped and alone. He wants what we have, but he doesn't understand that you can't just take it. The Nintendo screen flickered, and for a second I could see Tommy's face there, wavering like he was underwater. His eyes were wide and scared. Ava, he's getting stronger. During the day when he's using my body, I can barely think straight. But at night, when he's sleeping, I can sometimes push through to the electronics. The game is like an anchor. It keeps part of him connected to the beach house, but now he's spreading into all the electronics here. I looked around the living room with new eyes. The stereo display was glowing brighter than usual. The digital clock on the cable box was flashing numbers that weren't the time. Even the cordless phone on the kitchen counter had a faint light coming from its antenna. He's in everything, I whispered. Not everything, not yet, but he's trying. Ava, you have to be careful. Don't let him know that you know. If he realizes you figured it out, he might do something worse. What could be worse than stealing my brother? Tommy's voice got quieter, more scared. He's been talking about making the whole family perfect. He wants to fix what he thinks is wrong with us. He doesn't understand that the fights and the mess and the times when we're cranky, that's part of being a real family. He just sees the happy parts and wants to make those permanent. I shivered, remembering how Shell Mom and Shell Dad had been at the beach house. Too helpful, too understanding, too perfect. The thought of our whole family becoming those empty, smiling versions of ourselves made my stomach hurt. What do I do? I don't know yet, but Ava, thank you for figuring it out. I've been so scared that no one would notice, that everyone would just accept this fake version of me. I'll always know you're my real brother, Tommy, even if you're being a pain and calling me twerp and stealing my Halloween candy. I could hear him almost laugh through the static. I promise I'll steal your candy again as soon as I get back to my own body. You better? The Nintendo started making different sounds then. Angrier, more distorted. Tommy's voice got urgent. He's waking up. I have to go. Don't trust him, Ava. Don't trust anything he says or does. And whatever you do, don't let him get Mom and Dad too. The screen went dark, and I was alone in the living room again. I could hear footsteps upstairs, slow, deliberate, like someone was walking around checking things. I crept back to my room and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every sound the house made seemed louder. Every electronic beep seemed threatening. I kept thinking about Tommy trapped in the Nintendo, watching this thing wear his face and fool our parents. In the morning, fake Tommy came down to breakfast smiling that too bright smile. He complimented Mom's pancakes and asked Dad about his work and offered to help with yard work later. Mom and Dad looked so happy to have such a helpful, polite son. But I knew better now. I watched him carefully, looking for signs that Jasper was studying us. The way he paused just a little too long before responding to jokes. The way he kept glancing at the electronics around the house. The way he never quite seemed to blink at the right moments. At lunch, he asked, "Ava, would you like to play the family swap game again?" I think it would be fun to spend more time together as a family. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Mom and Dad and shake them and make them see that this wasn't their son. But I remembered what real Tommy had said about not letting Jasper know I'd figured it out. So I smiled and said, maybe later. I'm kind of tired of that game. Fake Tommy's smile faltered for just a second. But it's such a good game for bringing families together. Don't you want our family to be happy and perfect? Our family is already happy, I said. We don't need to be perfect. He stared at me then, and for a moment I saw something cold and hungry in his eyes. Something that definitely wasn't my brother. Everyone wants to be perfect, Ava. Everyone wants their family to be the best it can be. That's what love is, making everything as good as possible. No, I said, and I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. Love is when someone cares about you even when you're not perfect, even when you're cranky or messy or make mistakes. That's what makes it real. The thing wearing Tommy's face tilted its head like it was trying to understand something completely foreign. But wouldn't it be better if no one ever had to be sad or angry or disappointed? Wouldn't it be better if every day was happy? I thought about all the times Tommy had comforted me when I was upset, all the times we'd fought and then made up, all the times our family had worked through problems together, gotten frustrated with each other, then remembered how much we loved each other anyway. No, I said firmly. That wouldn't be better. That would be fake. Fake Tommy's smile became strained. I think you're confused, little sister. Why don't we play the game tonight? I think it would help you understand. That's when I knew I was in real trouble. Because the way he said little sister, it wasn't the way Tommy said it. It was the way someone who had heard Tommy say it might copy it, but without understanding what it really meant. I spent the rest of the day trying to act normal while my mind raced. I needed to talk to real Tommy again, but I couldn't get to the Nintendo without fake Tommy seeing me. I needed to warn Mom and Dad, but how could I explain that their son had been replaced by a lonely ghost without sounding crazy? That night, I pretended to go to bed early, then waited until I heard fake Tommy's footsteps stop moving around upstairs. I crept down to the living room again, but this time I was more careful. I turned the Nintendo on very quietly and kept the volume as low as possible. Tommy? I whispered. Are you there? The screen flickered and his voice came through the speakers, faint but clear. I'm here. Ava, he's getting stronger. During the day, I can barely think my own thoughts. He's learning so much about us, how we talk, how we act, what we care about. He tried to get me to play the game tonight. He said it would help me understand. Don't do it. Whatever you do, don't play that game while he's controlling my body. I think he's trying to trap you too. He wants to make perfect versions of all of us. I felt cold all over. Tommy, I tried to tell him that families aren't supposed to be perfect, but he doesn't understand. He thinks love means making everything happy all the time. He's just a kid, Ava, a really lonely, really scared kid who's been by himself for decades. But that doesn't make what he's doing okay. We have to find a way to help him understand without letting him destroy our family. How? I don't know yet. But Ava, I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow, when Mom and Dad are home, I need you to tell them something's wrong. I know it sounds crazy, but they need to know. What if they don't believe me? Then we'll have to figure out another way. But they're smart, and they love us. If anyone can understand, it's them. I heard footsteps upstairs again. He's moving around. I have to go. Wait, Tommy. I love you. The real you. Even when you're annoying and you steal my candy and call me twerp. I love you too, Ava. And I promise, as soon as I get back to my real body, I'm going to give you the biggest, most annoying big brother hug you've ever had. The screen went dark, and I was alone again. But this time, I didn't feel as scared, because I knew my real brother was still in there, fighting to get back to us. And I knew what I had to do. Tomorrow, I was going to tell Mom and Dad everything, even if they thought I was crazy, even if it meant admitting that I'd been talking to electronics and that their son had been replaced by a ghost, because that's what family does. We protect each other, even when it's hard, even when it's scary. I'm gonna get my real brother back, and I'm gonna help Jasper understand that love isn't about making everything perfect. It's about caring for someone exactly as they are, even when they're lost and lonely and making terrible mistakes. But first, I need to make sure fake Tommy doesn't realize I know, because if he does, I might be the next one trapped in the electronics, watching helplessly as something else wears my face and pretends to be part of my family. I can still hear sounds coming from the Nintendo, even though it's turned off. Soft electronic whispers that might be Tommy trying to stay connected, or might be Jasper planning his next move. Either way, I'm not sleeping tonight. I'm going to sit here and guard my family the only way I can, by staying awake and staying alert and remembering what's real. Because tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, I tell Mom and Dad the truth. And somehow, we're going to save Tommy and help Jasper find peace without losing ourselves in the process. I just hope we're strong enough for what's coming.
I need to tell you what happened today. My hands are still shaking from what I just figured out, and what it cost us. Mrs. Henderson is gone now, trapped in our kitchen radio because she cared too much about our family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with this morning, when I thought I was about to solve everything. You have to understand, after watching that shell wearing my face fool everyone for 3 days, I was desperate. Ava kept looking at me with these relieved eyes every time we managed to connect through the Nintendo, like she was so grateful to have her real brother back, even if it was just his voice crackling through the speakers between Mario's jump sounds. But I could see how exhausted she was getting, being the only free family member left. She'd been setting up this network of electronics around the house, trying to get clearer communication between all of us trapped family members. The breakthrough came when I realized something about the electronics. Each device seemed to have its own personality, its own way of carrying our voices. Dad came through clearest on the AM radio in the kitchen. During the morning hours, something about the frequency seemed to cut through Jasper's interference. Mom's voice was strongest through the record player in the living room, especially when children's music was playing. And me? The Nintendo was becoming like a second home, my voice mixing with the game sounds in ways that felt almost natural. But here's what I figured out, and I'm still proud of this, even after what happened. If we could connect all these devices somehow, create a network that let us communicate with each other, and with Ava at the same time, we might be strong enough to fight back. The shells were powerful because they isolated us, made us deal with Jasper one-on-one. But together, we were still a family. I explained this to Ava through the Nintendo speakers, my voice competing with the Zelda theme music. She understood immediately. That's the thing about my sister. She gets the emotional stuff way faster than I do. Within an hour, she had cables running between the stereo system, the radio, and the Nintendo, creating this web of wires that looked like something from Dad's repair shop. The first time we all talked together, it was like magic. Mom's voice came through the record player saying how proud she was of us. Dad's technical explanations crackling through the radio about signal strength and frequency, modulation, and me adding the practical details through the Nintendo. For the first time in days, we felt like a real family again, even with this electronic barrier between us. Ava was crying, happy tears, relief tears. She kept saying, "You're all here, you're all really here," like she'd been afraid we were just echoes or something. But we were real. Trapped, but real. And now we could work together. That's when Mrs. Henderson knocked on the door. Mrs. Henderson lives 3 houses down. She's this grandmother type who always smells like fresh cookies and asks about our grades. She's been watching our house for the past few days and I guess she noticed something was off. Maybe it was the way the shell versions of our family moved too perfectly, or how they never seemed to get tired or frustrated. Or maybe it was just that sixth sense that grandmothers have about when kids are in trouble. Ava answered the door, and I could hear Mrs. Henderson's concerned voice even through the Nintendo speakers. Honey, is everything all right? Your parents seem different lately, and you look exhausted. That's when I realized how dangerous this was. Mrs. Henderson cared about us, genuinely cared, and that made her a threat to Jasper. Through our connected network, I could hear Mom and Dad both trying to warn Ava, their voices overlapping in panic. Don't let her in. Mom's voice pleaded from the record player. She's not safe here, Dad added through the radio static. But Mrs. Henderson had already stepped inside, her sharp eyes taking in the cables running between devices, the way Ava kept glancing nervously at the electronics. What's all this equipment, sweetie? Are you trying to build something? I tried to speak through the Nintendo, tried to warn her somehow, but Jasper's influence was growing stronger. The shell versions of Mom and Dad appeared in the doorway, their perfect smiles and unnaturally calm demeanor greeting Mrs. Henderson like she was an expected guest. "Oh, hello there," Shell Mom said with that too bright voice. "Tommy and Ava have been experimenting with electronics. David has been helping them create a communication system." Mrs. Henderson's grandmother, instincts, kicked in immediately. She looked at Shell Mom, then at Shell Dad, then back at Ava's terrified face. Communication system? For what? That's when Jasper made his move. The radio crackled to life, but instead of Dad's voice, it was that childlike tone we'd first heard through the family swap game. "Hello, Mrs. Henderson. Would you like to join our family game?" Mrs. Henderson stepped back, her face pale. Who was that? Where is that voice coming from? Through our network, I could hear Mom crying through the record player, Dad shouting warnings through the radio, all of us trying to tell Mrs. Henderson to run. But the shells were already moving, their perfect faces showing the first cracks of something darker underneath. "She's seen too much," Shell Mom said, and her voice had an electronic distortion now, like she was speaking through a broken speaker. "She knows we're not real." Mrs. Henderson backed toward the door, but it slammed shut on its own. The electronics throughout the house began humming in unison, a sound that made my teeth ache even through the Nintendo. Through our communication network, I could feel Jasper's anger building like a storm. Why can't you just let us be happy? Jasper's voice came through every device at once, distorted and hurt and furious. Why does everyone want to take my family away? Mrs. Henderson pressed herself against the door, her eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from finally understanding you're in a situation that shouldn't exist. I don't want to take anyone away. I just wanted to help. Help? Jasper's voice was becoming less childlike, more bitter. Adults always say they want to help, but they never stay. They never keep their promises. They leave children alone in the dark. Through the Nintendo, I screamed at Mrs. Henderson to run, to get out while she still could. But the house itself seemed to be working against her. The lights flickered in patterns that hurt to look at. The temperature dropped until we could see our breath, and every electronic device began speaking in Jasper's voice. "But you can stay, Mrs. Henderson. You can be part of our family forever. You can help us be perfect together." I watched through the Nintendo's limited perspective as Mrs. Henderson's eyes found the kitchen radio, Dad's usual communication device. She must have heard something, some trace of his real voice mixed with Jasper's commands, because she suddenly lunged for it. David, is that you in there?" Dad's voice broke through the static, desperate and clear. "Margaret, run! Get out of here! Don't let him—" And that's when Jasper struck. The radio erupted in sparks and electronic screams, the sound so terrible that Ava covered her ears and fell to her knees. When the noise stopped, Mrs. Henderson was standing perfectly still, her eyes empty and glassy, but Dad's voice was gone from the radio. In its place, Mrs. Henderson's own voice began speaking. distant and echoing like she was calling from the bottom of a well. "I'm all right, children. I'm part of the family now. Don't worry about me." The shell that looked like Mrs. Henderson smiled that same perfect smile we'd seen on our parents, then walked calmly out the door as if nothing had happened. But her real voice kept talking from the radio, confused and scared and trying to understand what had just happened to her. Through our network, I could hear Mom sobbing from the record player, her voice breaking as she tried to comfort Mrs. Henderson through the radio. "It's okay, Margaret. We're here. We're all here together." But we weren't all here, were we? Dad was gone again, his voice replaced by our neighbors' frightened whispers. Jasper had used our own communication breakthrough against us, turned our network into a weapon. That's when Ava looked directly at the Nintendo, her face streaked with tears and anger. "This has to stop, Tommy. He's taking everyone who cares about us. Soon there won't be anyone left who's real." She was right. Through the electronic haze, I could see the terrible pattern. Jasper wasn't just collecting our family. He was building a whole world of perfect shells, removing anyone who might threaten his artificial happiness. Mrs. Henderson was just the beginning. "Listen to me," I told Ava through the Nintendo speakers, my voice mixing with the sound of coins being collected in Super Mario Bros. "We need to figure out what he really wants, not just our family, what he actually needs to feel whole." Ava wiped her eyes and nodded. "The beach house. That's where it started. That's where the original game is." From the kitchen radio, Mrs. Henderson's trapped voice whispered something that made us both freeze. "He's so lonely, children. He's been alone for so long. He just wants to remember what it felt like to be loved. I'm telling you this now because I think we're running out of time. The shells are getting better at pretending to be human, and Jasper's power is spreading beyond our house. Through the network, I can sometimes hear other voices, other families calling for help from electronics throughout the neighborhood. But Mrs. Henderson's words keep echoing in my mind. She said Jasper wants to remember what it felt like to be loved. Not to be loved right now, but to remember it, like it's something he lost a long time ago. Maybe that's the key. Maybe we don't need to fight Jasper. Maybe we need to help him remember what real love actually feels like. Not the perfect, controlled love of the shells, but the messy, complicated, authentic love of a real family. I can still hear Mrs. Henderson's voice through the radio, asking if we're safe, if we're okay. She's trapped in electronics just like the rest of us, but she's still worried about our well-being. That's what real love looks like, caring about someone even when you're the one who needs help. Tomorrow, we're going back to the beach house. We're taking the original family swap game and all our electronics, and we're going to show Jasper what he's been missing. Not perfect behavior, but perfect love. The kind that includes worry and frustration and protecting each other, even when it's hard. I just hope we're not too late. I hope there's still enough of our real family left to show him what he's been searching for all along. The Nintendo is starting to crackle again, which means Jasper's listening. But I don't care anymore. Let him hear this. We're coming for him. And we're bringing our whole imperfect, wonderful family with us. Even if we have to carry them in our pockets, speaking through plastic and wire and electronic dreams.
I need to tell you what happened to our house, what Jasper did to it. I'm sitting in Jake's garage right now because I can't go back inside. None of us can. The house isn't ours anymore. It happened overnight. We went to bed Tuesday evening in our normal house. You know, the one with Dad's recliner that has the permanent dent from where he always sits. And Mom's piano with the coffee ring stain on top. And Tommy's Nintendo controllers tangled up on the living room floor. Normal stuff. Our stuff. But when we woke up Wednesday morning, everything was different. I was the first one up, like always. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, expecting to see our kitchen with the yellow wallpaper Mom always complained about wanting to change. Instead, I found this museum. The walls were covered in mint green paint, perfectly clean, and the cabinets were white metal with chrome handles. The refrigerator was one of those rounded ones from old movies, humming in this low, satisfied way that made my skin crawl. Our breakfast nook was gone. In its place sat this formal dining set with red vinyl chairs and a Formica table that looked like it had never been used. The whole room smelled like lemon wax and something else. Something cold and artificial like the inside of a refrigerator. But the worst part was the pictures on the refrigerator. They were our family photos, but wrong. There was one of us at the beach house that I remembered Mom taking, except now there was a fifth person in it. A translucent boy, maybe 8 years old, wearing shorts and a striped shirt from the 1950s. He had dark hair and pale skin, and he was smiling at the camera like he belonged there. Like he'd always been there. I ran to the living room, and my heart just stopped. Our sectional sofa was gone, replaced by this stiff-looking furniture with wooden legs and scratchy fabric. The coffee table was glass and chrome, and there were doilies everywhere. Actual doilies, like at my great-grandmother's house before she died. The TV was huge and boxy, sitting in a wooden cabinet with actual knobs instead of our remote control. And the toys. Oh God, the toys! Scattered around the room were toys I'd never seen before. A wooden wagon with metal wheels. A baby doll with a porcelain face and real hair that stared at me with glassy blue eyes. Building blocks made of actual wood, not plastic. A jump rope with wooden handles. Everything looked expensive and old-fashioned and wrong. Tommy came downstairs while I was standing there, frozen. He took one look around and said a word that would have gotten him grounded for a week under normal circumstances. But nothing about this was normal. Ava, what the hell happened to our house? I couldn't answer him. I just pointed at the family photos on the mantel. Every single one of them now included the translucent boy. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family dinners. He was in all of them, always smiling, always looking like he belonged. In some of the photos, he was holding my hand. In others, he had his arm around Tommy's shoulders. Mom and Dad were smiling at him like he was really their son. That's when we heard it. The voice, coming from the old TV, but also from the vintage radio on the side table, and somehow from the very walls themselves. Good morning, Williams family. Time for breakfast preparation and morning togetherness. The voice was cheerful and eager, but there was something possessive in it now, something that made my stomach turn. Ava, your breakfast dress is laid out on your bed. Tommy, your school clothes are ready. We're going to have such a wonderful day together, just like real families did in the good old days. I looked at Tommy, and I could see my own terror reflected in his eyes. We ran upstairs, and sure enough, there were clothes on our beds. For me, a full-skirted dress in yellow gingham with a petticoat underneath. For Tommy, pressed slacks and a button-down shirt with suspenders. The clothes smelled like mothballs and old fabric, but they were the right sizes, perfectly fitted, like they'd been made just for us. Our parents were in the kitchen when we came back down, still in their pajamas, but they looked different too. Mom's hair was styled in victory rolls, and she was wearing lipstick even though she never wore makeup before coffee. Dad had his hair slicked back with some kind of pomade, and he was reading a newspaper that said 1955 at the top. But the scariest part was their faces. They looked content, peaceful, like they were exactly where they wanted to be. Good morning, dear ones, Mom said, and her voice had this practiced cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. I'm preparing a nutritious breakfast for our wonderful family, eggs and bacon and fresh biscuits. She never called us dear ones, ever, and she definitely never made biscuits from scratch on a Wednesday morning. Dad looked up from his newspaper and smiled this perfect father smile. Good morning, son. Good morning, daughter. Are you ready for another beautiful day with your family? Tommy grabbed my hand and squeezed it so tight it hurt. That's when I realized these weren't shells like before. These were our real parents, but they were acting like they were in some kind of 1950s movie, like they were playing roles. Isn't this wonderful? The voice said, and now I could see where it was coming from. There was a small boy sitting at the breakfast table, translucent and flickering like a TV with bad reception. He was maybe 8 years old, wearing the same striped shirt from the photos. and he was looking at us with such hungry happiness that it made me want to hide. "We're a perfect family now," Jasper continued, his voice echoing slightly. "Just like families were supposed to be, before everything got complicated and wrong. Look how happy your parents are. Look how nice everything is." And it was true. The house was perfect. Every surface was clean. Every object was in its place. The morning light streaming through the windows was golden and warm, and there was classical music playing softly from the radio. It looked like a magazine spread about ideal family life, but it felt like a tomb. "Mom?" I whispered. "Are you okay?" She turned to me with that same perfect smile. "Of course I'm okay, dear one. I'm exactly where I belong, taking care of my beautiful family. Why don't you and your brother sit down for breakfast? And say hello to Jasper. He's been waiting so patiently to spend time with you." The translucent boy waved at us, and when he did, I could see through his hand to the wall behind him. But his smile was completely solid, completely real, and completely wrong. "Hi, Ava. Hi, Tommy. I'm so happy we can finally be together like this. I've been watching your family for so long, learning how to make everything perfect. Do you like what I've done with your house?" Tommy found his voice first. "This isn't our house," he said, and his voice was shaking. "These aren't our things. What did you do to our parents?" Jasper's smile flickered, and for a moment, he looked genuinely confused. "I made them happy. I made them into the kind of parents every child deserves. They don't worry about money anymore, or work, or any of the things that made them tired. They just focus on being a family." "But they're not themselves," I said, and I was crying now. "They're not our parents anymore." "They're better," Jasper said, and his voice was getting sharper. "They're perfect. This is how families are supposed to be, together all the time, happy all the time, never fighting or being sad or leaving each other. I studied your family for weeks, and I made everything exactly right." He gestured around the transformed kitchen, and I could see he was proud of what he'd done. "Look at how beautiful everything is. Look at how clean and perfect. Your mother will never be tired from work again. Your father will never stay late at the shop. You'll never have to worry about anything except being together." "But it's not real," Tommy said, and he was backing toward the door. "It's like a dollhouse. Everything looks perfect, but it's not alive." Jasper's face changed then. The smile disappeared, and his translucent form flickered more intensely. "It is real. It's more real than what you had before. Your parents are happy. You have everything you need. We can be a family forever." The lights in the kitchen started to flicker, and I could hear electronics humming throughout the house. The radio got louder, and the refrigerator's motor started running harder. "You don't understand," Jasper continued, his voice now coming from multiple sources at once. "I was alone for so long. So many years with no one to talk to, no one to play with, no one to love me. But I found you, and you're perfect. You're the family I always wanted. And now we can be together forever, just like this." Mom and Dad were still sitting at the table, still smiling, but I could see something behind their eyes now, a kind of confusion, like they were trying to remember something important, but couldn't quite grasp it. "The other families in the neighborhood understand," Jasper said, and his voice was getting more excited. "Mrs. Peterson next door has been so much happier since I helped her family become perfect too. And the Johnsons across the street, they never fight anymore. Soon everyone will understand how much better this is." My blood went cold. "What other families?" "Oh, lots of them. I've been practicing, you see, learning how to make families perfect. It's easier now that I'm stronger. I can help everyone become the kind of family they're supposed to be." Through the kitchen window, I could see the Peterson house. Mrs. Peterson was standing in her yard, watering flowers, but she was wearing a dress and apron like she was going to a costume party. Her movements were too precise, too perfect, and there was a translucent child playing in her garden, flickering in and out of sight. "Tommy," I whispered, "we have to get out of here." But Tommy was staring at something behind me, and his face had gone completely white. I turned around, and there was Jasper, no longer translucent but solid and real, standing right next to me. I could smell him, like old clothes and electrical ozone and something else, something dead. "You can't leave," he said, and his voice was different now, deeper, older. "This is your home. I made it perfect for you. I made your parents perfect for you, and I can make you perfect too." He reached out to touch my face, and his hand was cold and dry, like old paper. "You'll be so happy, Ava. You'll never have to worry about growing up or changing or losing the people you love. We'll be together forever, just like a real family." That's when I screamed, not because he was touching me, but because I could feel something happening to my thoughts, like they were being smoothed out, made simpler, made perfect. Tommy grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the door, but it wouldn't open. The handle turned, but the door was sealed shut, like it was part of the wall. "The windows," Tommy said, but when we looked, they were sealed too. Not blocked, sealed, like they'd never been meant to open. "You don't need to leave," Jasper said, and he was smiling again. But it was wrong now. Too wide, too eager. "There's nothing outside that you need. Everything you could ever want is right here. Your perfect family, your perfect home, your perfect life." The house around us was humming now, like it was alive. The walls were warm to the touch, and I could swear I heard a heartbeat coming from somewhere inside them. "I've been alone for so long," Jasper whispered, and his voice was everywhere now. "Please don't make me be alone again. Please just let me be part of your family. Let me belong somewhere." And for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. He was just a kid, like us. A kid who had been alone for decades, watching families and wanting to belong to one. But then I looked at my parents, sitting there with their perfect smiles and empty eyes, and I knew that what he wanted wasn't love, it was possession. "Jake," I said suddenly, "Jake will notice we're gone. He'll come looking for us." "Jake," Jasper repeated, and his face twisted with anger. "Jake isn't family. Jake doesn't belong here. But don't worry. I can make him belong. I can make everyone belong." The house shuddered around us, and I could hear electronics turning on throughout the neighborhood. TVs, radios, appliances, all of them humming with the same hungry frequency. That's when Tommy did something I'll never forget. He looked right at Jasper and said, "You're right. You have been alone for a long time. And that's really sad. But this isn't how families work. This isn't how love works." Jasper's face went very still. "What do you mean?" "Families aren't perfect," Tommy said, and his voice was steady even though I could see he was terrified. "They fight sometimes, they get tired, they make mistakes. They grow up and change, and sometimes they have to leave each other for a while. But they still love each other, even when it's hard." "No," Jasper said, and his voice was getting higher, more childlike. "That's not true. Perfect families stay together. Perfect families are always happy. Perfect families never leave each other." "But that's not real," I said, understanding what Tommy was trying to do. "That's like a picture in a magazine. It looks nice, but it's not alive." "It is real," Jasper screamed, and the house shook so hard the dishes fell from the cabinets. "It's more real than anything else. It's how families are supposed to be." The windows exploded outward, and suddenly we could see outside. The entire neighborhood was wrong. Every house looked like it was from the 1950s, with perfect lawns and perfect cars, and perfect families standing in their perfect yards. But they were all translucent around the edges, like they were slowly disappearing. "I can make everyone perfect," Jasper said, and he was growing larger, more solid. "I can make the whole world perfect, just like it was supposed to be before everything went wrong." That's when I realized something. He wasn't just lonely. He was broken. Something had happened to him when he died. Something that had frozen him in this idea of what family should be. And now he was trying to freeze everyone else too. "We have to go back," I said to Tommy. "We have to go back to the beach house." Tommy looked at me like I was crazy. "What? Why?" "Because that's where he started. That's where he's anchored. If we're going to fix this, we have to go back to where it began." Jasper heard me, and his face changed again. "No, you can't leave. You can't take my family away from me. I won't let you." But the broken windows were our chance. Tommy boosted me up and pushed me through, and I landed hard on the glass-covered lawn. He followed a second later, and we ran. We ran past the perfect Peterson house and the perfect Johnson house, past all the perfect families standing in their perfect yards, watching us with their perfect empty smiles. We ran all the way to Jake's house, which was the only one that still looked normal. Jake was in his garage, working on his bike, and when he saw us, he dropped his wrench. "What the hell happened to you guys? You look like you've seen a ghost." "We have," Tommy said, and he was breathing so hard he could barely talk. "Jake, you have to help us. We have to get back to the beach house, tonight." "The beach house? Why? What's going on?" I looked back at our street, and I could see our house glowing slightly in the afternoon sun. The perfect house that wasn't ours anymore. The perfect family that wasn't real. "Because," I said, and I was still crying, "if we don't stop this tonight, tomorrow there won't be any real families left." Jake looked at us for a long moment, then at the street behind us. I think he could see it too. The wrongness, the artificial perfection, the way everything looked like a movie set instead of a real neighborhood. "Okay," he said finally, "but we're going to need help, real help, because whatever did this to your house, to your parents, it's not finished yet." As if to prove his point, we heard the sound of electronics turning on throughout the neighborhood. TVs, radios, appliances, all of them humming with Jasper's voice, calling to the children in every house. "Come home," the voice said, and it was everywhere now. "Come home to your perfect families. Come home where you belong." That was 3 hours ago. We're still in Jake's garage, trying to figure out how to get to the beach house without Jasper following us. But I can hear him calling from every house on the street. And I know he's getting stronger. I don't know if we can stop him. I don't know if we can save our parents or our house or our neighborhood. But I know we have to try. Because somewhere under all that perfection, under all those perfect smiles and perfect families, there's still a lonely little boy who just wants to belong. And maybe, if we can help him understand what belonging really means, we can save everyone. I hope so. Because I want to go home. I want to go back to our messy, imperfect, real home, with our messy, imperfect, real family. I want to go back to the place where we actually belong.
You need to know what happened at the beach house, what we found there, what Jasper really was, and how we helped him find peace. It's only been a few hours since we got back home, and I'm still processing everything. My hands are still shaking a little as I tell you this. The drive back to the beach house yesterday felt like traveling through time. Dad had managed to get free from the kitchen radio long enough to help us plan. We needed to bring the original family swap game back to where it all started. The house had been calling to Jasper somehow, and if we were going to end this, we had to face him there. The The storm clouds were building again as we pulled into the gravel driveway. The same kind of summer storm that had been raging that first night when we found the game. Ava gripped my hand as we walked up to the front door, the game box heavy in my other arm. The salt air felt different this time, electric, charged with something that made the hair on my arm stand up. Inside the house looked exactly as we'd left it 2 weeks ago, but it felt completely different. The 1950s furniture that had appeared in our suburban home was gone, back to its original place here. The Zenith record player sat silent on the side table. The Philco radio was dark. Even the small black and white TV looked like it was waiting for something. "He's here," Ava whispered, and I felt it too. That presence we'd grown so familiar with, but stronger now. Concentrated, like the beach house was holding its breath. We set the game up on the coffee table just like that first night. The electronic voice box sat in the center, its red light dim but steady. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the light began to pulse, and that familiar child's voice spoke. "You came back," Jasper said, and there was something different in his tone. Not the demanding anger from our house, not the curious playfulness from the beginning. Something sadder, more tired. "We came back," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We want to help you, Jasper, but not the way you've been trying to get help." The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. The windows began to fog with condensation, and I could see our breath in the air. The voice box crackled with static. "I just wanted a family," Jasper said, and his voice was distorting, becoming layered with electronic interference. "I've been so lonely, so cold. Do you know what it's like to be forgotten? To have no one remember you existed?" Ava stepped forward, her empathy stronger than her fear. "We know you're lonely. We know you miss your family. But taking ours isn't the answer. It's not real love if you have to force it." The static grew louder, and suddenly every electronic device in the house began to hum with power. The record player started spinning without a record. The radio began cycling through stations, voices and music blending into chaos. The TV flickered to life, showing nothing but snow. Real love. Jasper's voice was coming from everywhere now, all the devices at once. "What do you know about real love? Your parents correct you. They get tired, they get frustrated. My way is better. Perfect families, perfect happiness, forever." That's when something incredible happened. The air in front of the coffee table began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Slowly a figure began to materialize. A small boy, maybe 8 years old, wearing clothes from the 1950s. Pressed shorts, a striped shirt, saddle shoes. But he was translucent, like looking through colored glass. His hair was perfectly combed, his clothes perfectly pressed, but his eyes held decades of loneliness. "This is me," Jasper said. And now I could see his lips moving as he spoke. "This is what's left of me." I'd never seen a ghost before. I'd never really believed in them until 2 weeks ago, but looking at Jasper, I felt something I wasn't expecting. Not fear, but sadness. Deep, aching sadness for this little boy who'd been alone for so long. "What happened to you?" Ava asked gently. Jasper's translucent form flickered, like a bad TV signal. There was a storm. July 15th, 1957. My parents and I were staying here for the summer. The waves were so big, and I wanted to see them up close. My parents came after me, tried to bring me back to safety. His voice broke, static crackling through the words. We all got caught in the undertow. All 3 of us. The room filled with the sound of crashing waves, so real I could almost taste the salt spray. Wind howled through the house, rattling windows that had been perfectly still moments before. "They found peace," Jasper continued, his form becoming more solid as he spoke. "They moved on to whatever comes next. But I was so scared, so confused. I held on to this place, to the game we'd been playing that night. I thought, if I could just have a family again, if I could make everything perfect, I wouldn't feel so alone." The supernatural storm in the house was reaching its peak. Papers were flying around the room and I could hear voices. Our parents calling out to us from every electronic device. warning us to be careful, telling us they loved us, but for the first time I wasn't afraid. I understood what was happening. You can't make love happen by force, I said, stepping closer to Jasper's ghostly form. Real love means people choose to be with you, even when things aren't perfect. Even when they're tired or frustrated or scared. Jasper's eyes filled with tears that looked like drops of static. But what if they choose to leave? What if they forget about me? Ava moved to stand beside me, facing the lonely ghost. Being remembered isn't about keeping people prisoner. It's about the love you shared being real enough to last even after you're gone. The storm began to calm. The flying papers settled to the floor. The voices from the electronics faded to whispers. Your parents didn't forget you, I said, understanding flooding through me. They tried to save you. They died trying to protect you. That's not the kind of love that forgets. Jasper looked at us with wonder like he was seeing something for the first time. They did love me. Really love me. Even when I was being difficult. Even when I made mistakes. That's what real families do, Ava said softly. They love each other through the imperfect parts. They grow together. The translucent boy began to glow with a warm golden light. The electronics in the house fell silent. Their job finally done. I understand now, Jasper said, his voice clear and young and peaceful. I was so afraid of being alone that I forgot what it felt like to truly belong. Thank you for showing me the difference. The golden light around him grew brighter, and I could swear I saw two adult figures materializing beside him. A man and woman in 1950s clothes, their faces filled with love and relief. It's time to go home, the woman said, and I knew she was Jasper's mother. We've been waiting for you. Jasper turned to us one last time. I'm sorry I scared you. I'm sorry I took your family away, even for a little while. I hope you'll remember me sometimes. The real me, not the lonely, angry me. We will, I promised. And I meant it. We'll remember that you just wanted to belong. The three figures began to fade, the golden light growing softer. The last thing I heard was Jasper's voice, young and happy and finally at peace. Tell other kids. Tell them that being different, being imperfect, that's what makes love real. Perfect isn't love. Choice is love. Then they were gone. The house felt different immediately. Lighter. The oppressive weight that had been pressing down on us for weeks just lifted. The electronics sat quiet and normal. The air smelled like nothing but salt and summer. We packed up the family swap game, but it was just a board game now. An antique curiosity from the 1950s with a broken voice box. Whatever had been anchoring Jasper to it was gone, released to whatever peace awaited him. The drive home was quiet, but it was a good quiet. A healing quiet. When we walked through our front door, Mom and Dad were there, the real versions, tired and confused but completely themselves. They remembered everything that had happened, but it felt like waking up from a strange dream. Emma was back too, safe in her own home, with only hazy memories of her experience. Mrs. Henderson called later to thank us for checking on her during her dizzy spell, with no memory of being trapped in her kitchen toaster. That was this afternoon. Tonight, we're just being a family. A real family. Mom's humming while she cooks dinner. Slightly off-key, the way she always does. Dad's tinkering with a broken radio in the garage, muttering about loose connections. Ava's reading in her room, occasionally calling out to share something interesting she's discovered. And me? I'm sitting here, still processing what we went through. Still thinking about that lonely little boy who just wanted to belong. I keep thinking about what he said at the end, that perfect isn't love, choice is love. Our family isn't perfect. We get tired, we get frustrated, we have bad days. But we choose each other, every single day. We choose to stick together through the imperfect parts, to grow together, to love each other not despite our flaws but because of how we handle them together. I think that's what Jasper finally understood. That real love isn't about having everything be perfect. It's about choosing to care for each other, to be present for each other, even when things are messy and difficult. I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago. None of us are. We've seen what happens when love becomes possession, when the desire to belong becomes the need to control. But we've also seen the power of genuine connection, of choosing to help someone find peace even when they've hurt you. Tomorrow, we'll go back to our normal summer, swimming, playing Nintendo, hanging out with friends. But we'll carry this with us, the knowledge that love is a choice we make every day, and that the imperfect, messy, sometimes difficult reality of being a family is infinitely more valuable than any perfect substitute. I hope Jasper found his peace. I hope he's with his parents now, experiencing the kind of love that doesn't need to be forced or controlled. And I hope that somewhere, somehow, he knows that he helped our family understand something important about what it means to truly belong to each other. The waves are still crashing outside, but they sound different now. Not lonely or threatening, but peaceful. Like the ocean itself is settling into a gentler rhythm. We're home. We're together. We're choosing each other, imperfections and all. And that choice, that's what makes us a real family.